All right. Welcome in to Carps Corner. Going to break down this Toledo Ohio State game, the romp that was 77-14. Buckeyes getting it done and getting it done in a big way. Little scary to start off with. Toledo's got some dudes. And I talked to you in the last show about DeQuan Finn, their quarterback, leading rusher, obviously their leading passer, dual threat guy, very athletic, and a guy that could really carry the team. And I think that proved to be the case, especially early on, as we saw how athletic he was, how tough he was, took a lot of shots, and his ability to make plays. I mean, he's a guy that you wouldn't be shocked to see maybe transfer, in the future, potentially to a bigger school and move around. I mean, he's got that type of ability. Maybe I don't know, NFL type caliber ability. I'd have to watch more film on him. Very limited sample size, but I like what DeQuan Finn can do. Very, very talented player, and did a good job, especially opening up against the Buckeyes and what he was able to do with some of his big plays. You look at Ohio State, they gave up defensively 183 through the air, 124 on the ground, and you really break that down into three plays. Newton's 40-yard catch, Zeros, his 50-yard catch for a touchdown, where he beats Cam Brown across the middle. Just a bad footwork situation by Cam, and there may even have been a breakdown in coverage. I got to look at that a little bit closer and dive back in on that some more. And then Finn's 23-yard run, so you have 90 in the passing, and then another 23 on the ground. It's 113 yards. I mean, that's basically a third of all of their yardage is broken down into three plays right there. And especially their passing yardage, half of it was on two plays. Now, that's not to say that you can just wipe those plays away and those are going to be gone. But I thought the Ohio State defense played pretty well, and it's 42-14 at halftime. You feel good, about the situation and what they were ultimately able to do, coming in with the task of treating this game the way that it should be. And it lived up to expectations. I thought the environment was pretty good at the game. Night game, like I said, not a huge fan. Went down to the game, took my son and some of his friends. And the stadium had a pretty good buzz around it. People got into the stadium beforehand, and they had the Script Ohio with the Alumni Band, all four Script Ohio's going. So that was pretty cool. I'm going to post that here as well, so everybody can take a look at that and see something. It's one of the cooler traditions in all of college sports. And that's what separates college athletics and college sports from professionals. You have things like that, and that's something that's cool that people are there watching. Maybe you've never seen Script Ohio before. Maybe they're in the band, or maybe they remember seeing it with their family, and you had a family member in the band. You have someone down there ultimately in the alumni band as well. So it's really cool to see that when they do all four sides. So the Script Ohio looks pretty legit all four ways. So another thing, great night too, by the way. Phenomenal weather. You could not have asked for a better Ohio night. Very similar to the Notre Dame game. A little bit muggy early on, a little humid, but man, it really felt good right at kick, and it was an awesome environment for that. So held up pretty well. One more night game coming up. We've got Wisconsin. That will probably be it for night games at the Shoe this year, as we sit here and look forward with everything that's going on, and where some of these teams are that they'll be playing. Iowa, they're not going to be a night game. Michigan definitely not going to be a night game, and I think that's probably the only two that you would think could potentially be worthy of night games. They already have Rutgers set at 3:30. Penn State's going to be at noon. Maybe Michigan State's a night game up there, potentially Northwestern on the road, for Big Ten Network. So those are some of the things that, looking forward to. Focusing on the defenses, we talked a little bit about DeQuan Finn and what he was able to do, their quarterback. Up front, getting it done, 3 sacks, 9 TFLs. Love that. Continue the pressure with everything that we saw, being able to get off the ball, get in the backfield, and go make plays. Defensive speed looked really good. One interesting note, Tanner McAllister, Josh Proctor, both not dressed. And so you had some guys filling in there. Lathan Ransom, who has played a lot with Josh in split time thus far this year, played really well. We'll get into what he was able to do. And Cam Martinez, popping in there for Tanner McAllister, looking really good. And my buddy Jeremy Birmingham over at Rivals and on the podcast, loves him some Cam Martinez, and finally getting a chance to see him and what he's able to do. So I think that speaks a lot to the depth of this Ohio State secondary and the number of players they have back there. They feel that they can get in the game. Linebacker wise, you liked what you saw there. Tommy, 5 tackles, Cody, 4 tackles, Steele, a couple of tackles in the TFL. Steele's a fast dude. And to watch DeQuan Finn on one of his runs, get the angle, kind of outrun Steele, who was closing the gap, closing distance on him in a hurry. It's tough to replicate, a guy like that with that type of speed and athleticism. And so to see Steele, I wouldn't say get outrun, but he was able to outrun the angle, if you will, and turn the corner, and have his big game with it. It's pretty impressive, because I know that Steele Chambers is a fast dude, a fast linebacker. But overall, I thought the linebacker play pretty good again. They're continuing to grow and build on it, and that's going to be important as we discuss this upcoming game this week. If Wisconsin knows how to do anything, if there's anything they want to do, it's going to be to run the football. So there's going to be that element and that aspect that we're going to be looking at here. Ronnie Hickman getting the interception. How about it? My man EA, Palier Gaotiote, he goes by EA, getting the fumble recovery as well. So great to see that. Couple of turnovers. We were hoping. They say they come in bunches. So you get the interception. Ultimately, you get a fumble recovery as well. So Ohio State defense, special teams getting it done right there. And you start to now see what this defense can be when you start getting stops, getting turnovers. You want to eliminate those big plays. You never want to see them. Big plays are tough because they're usually a result of 2 things: either missed tackles or missed assignments, and occasionally just someone getting beat skill-wise, which doesn't happen that often at Ohio State. And so those are kind of the 3 ways where you see big plays happen. Ohio State's tackling has been really good. Finn was a very athletic dude. He's going to make some guys miss. He's going to be able to pull through some tackles. They had some receivers that weren't bad. And, when you come in there, it's a night game. It's Toledo. Not that you take it lightly, but I don't know if you're fully anticipating everything that was there. And so, Cam Brown, obviously, the big one, Newton had a catch as well. Anything over those explosive gain marks of 20 yards, it's a little bit concerning for you, but you limited those, and they did not have many explosive gains. And the Ohio State defense, after, I wouldn't say struggling, but giving up a couple of touchdowns early, which I don't like. They had been really good with that. Now it's 3 touchdowns in 3 games. You want to keep that number down, especially with the big plays, but playing pretty good balls. But Ronnie Hickman getting the INT, getting it going. It said Cam Martinez looking good, making some plays. You see him out there making some tackles, looking good looking good in coverage in my mind. I thought Cam did a really good job playing out there with what he was able to do. One of the interesting things too is Cam Brown, when he got beat on that long ball, they came back to him later in the game, later than that in the next series. And I thought Cam responded really well. He's a veteran guy. You're going to get beat. And they always talk about cornerbacks, the old adage, you have to have a short memory. Well, he had a short memory. And Cam understood what happened. He digested it. He embraced it. All right, boom. And what do I need to do to ultimately get better? And how am I going to make sure that I don't let one negative play early in the game impact the rest of it? And I thought Cam did a pretty good job, of handling that. Jack Sawyer, great seeing him get on the board with a sack. Thought he played really well. I mean, they move him around so much, and to try to keep an eye on how he's fitting, when he's wrapping, this defense with how they do it, it's a very unique style. Because it looks like a little 3-3 at times. It's a 4-2-5. They're moving a lot of guys around and creating some of those matchups. And to have someone as athletic as Jack Sawyer getting those sacks, is pretty good. And maybe Curry can even slide into that spot at some time, so you can make sure Jack's getting even more rushes. And that's something that we'll kind of dive into about, Caden Curry, getting him in there. Where would he ultimately fit? Because we saw him play as well and get in the game and get some stats. And look pretty darn good. And then Javonte Jean-Baptiste, couple of sacks. He had some plays that you probably would have liked to have had back as well. But for a guy who's been around the program for a while, to see him get some of that production, that ultimately feels pretty good. And I know that they're excited about that. And for one of the veterans, because here's the reality, you need your upperclassmen to play well. Guys who have been around the program, they need to be producers. And it helps. Your young guys need to push them, but your older guys, there's always a place for them. And the more veteran your team is, especially on the field, the better that ultimately can be for you. There's some general observances as well, some points I want to make sure we hit. CJ, any rust that we would have said was there from Notre Dame and then Arkansas, like all that appeared to be shaken off. 22 of 27, over 350 yards, again, 5 TDs. He looked as comfortable and as smooth as you were going to see. And so CJ Stroud, boom, I thought that game, you don't call it necessarily a Heisman Trophy game because it's Toledo, but statistically, that's getting you in that conversation. And so now when you put up 77 points, people turn their head. They look. They saw that. And then also Kyle McCord getting in. Thought looked pretty good. Put some numbers up, had some stats out there. I thought he saw the field pretty well for the most part. Did a good job governing the offense. Ryan, I thought, got him in at an appropriate time, making sure that you start to see some of these guys and get them some experience. Because there was a lot of intrigue around CJ Stroud, coming in. How would he look in a real game last season? Well, because you never really seen him throw the ball. Now, you want to make sure that you're getting McCord and Devin Brown, getting those guys some opportunities out there on the field. I thought this was the perfect game to be able to do it. And so we got a chance to kind of see Kyle McCord is one of the things that I wanted to watch looking at from the last show. Toughness element. Ryan Day has talked about being able to run the ball when we want to run the ball. I believe Luke Whippler said something about it. All these guys, especially up front, we're talking about it. Opening drive, 4 passes, 4 runs, good balance. Pounding, Mayan Williams. A lot of Mayan Williams there, especially early, 10 for 77. Travion gets hurt, leaves the game. We'll see how ultimately serious that is. Hopefully it's not a big deal. But it wasn't nearly as big of a factor just due to his limited reps. And so you rode Mayan pretty hard early. Like I said, 10 for 77, you felt good. And then we got to see the young buck, Dallin Hayden. And I don't think anybody thought he was going to get this much run in the game. But when Trey goes down, all of a sudden you're left with Mayan. This Ohio State team has great depth, and the running back room had great depth, and all of a sudden you get some injuries early in training camp, get some injuries early in the season. Now you're looking around. You went from 3 guys, 4 you felt pretty good about. Now you might be down to 2 this week. And so you wanted to make sure Mayan was going to be rested, didn't want to risk him getting nicked up. So you rode Dallin Hayden, and dude ripped off a 45-yard run. Awesome. 17 for 108. So you feel like he can carry the mail a little bit. He was in there pounding. Showed me something. Showed me that there's something there. And that was good. You needed to see that. Ryan probably needed to see that. He knew it from practice and watching him in the scrimmage. There was something to Dallin Hayden. But under the bright lights, literally, of a night game, it's always nice to see one of your running backs come out there, show that vision, show that poise and patience, and be able to go. So the emergence of Dallin Hayden, who's going to he's going to play this season and play a significant role. He is going to be utilized. He's the 3rd running back. Heck, he might be the 2nd running back, depending on the extent of Henderson's injury. So he's going to need to be there, and you can't worry about him fumbling when you get in, missing protections, this and that. He is going to have to grow up in a hurry, but you liked what you saw from him. And this is the benefit of being able to have a full season where you have a lot of veteran players. You have some really good young players. You get these big leads, and it's 42-14 at halftime, have a couple drives out of the second and the third quarter, and then you start getting guys in, and you get them that experience. It didn't happen during COVID last year. You never really felt like you were able to get those leads, and you had to keep the defense out there because those guys needed those reps. Now you can start to work some people in, and it feels a whole lot better. One guy we've been talking about a lot, man, Cade Stove. Ohio State never really uses the tight end. They get to the NFL, tight ends from Ohio State, they have good careers. They're tough blockers. They're smart. They know what to do. They check all the boxes. Cade Stove for a guy who linebacker, D-end, tight end, linebacker, back to D-end this year, like moving them all around, doing it all. And doing it all, just because he wants to play ball. Playing tight end like a defensive player, getting after it in the running game, bringing that attitude. Finally hooked him up a little bit. And CJ looks like he feels pretty darn comfortable running those benders, running the little wheels. How about 3 catches, 83 yards? I wanted to see him get in the end zone so bad, but Cade Stove now is a weapon. And if you have that type of weapon at tight end with the guys you have outside, as we saw Marvin doing Marvin things and Emeka doing Emeka things, Jackson getting a little play in there, looking really good. That's awesome. And Julian Fleming coming back with what he was able to bring to the table. Cade Stover can be a difference maker because you can't account for everybody. And if you have a guy like that who can catch the football as well as he can, but also be a blocker, it's real hard for defenses to try to understand and determine what you're doing and to try to play the pass more when you have a viable guy who can go up on the edge and go get after it in the run game, which is what Cade Stover can do. Talking about Cade, Mitch Rossi, another guy who's out there, getting some action. They move him around, H-back, saw him in some true fullback. I believe Ohio State got in 22 personnel. Got a little tight end wing, got in the fullback with the tailback, Mayan back there, and pound the football, man. When you can go 10 personnel, which is 4 wide receivers, and then you can also go 22 and do it with great effectiveness, and you have the personnel and the capabilities to get under center, but also sit back in the gun, it makes you a very, very difficult offense to defend because these teams now looking at the film from this, all right, we got to spend time working on this. You only get so many hours to practice, so many hours of film, so many hours of meetings. And so now they got to spend some of that time working on this package where, gosh, you got a big offensive line. Cade Stover's a monster. Mitch Rossi's a heck of a blocker. They've got this meatball back there and Mayan Williams, who's a hammer. Like, that's tough. You can play like Wisconsin, and then you can also air that thing out and, throw it around like everybody else. And so being able to live in both of those worlds and have that versatility with some of these tight ends and the H-backs and the fullbacks, like that is something I know Kevin Wilson has been itching to get in there. Ryan Day, itching, Justin Fry, itching to get those guys in there and to show some of this and to be able to utilize it. So that was big. Mentioned Julian Fleming back, a couple of touchdowns, a guy that worked his tail off all off season, dedicated, got focused, locked in, had a great training camp. Couldn't play, a little bit nicked up to start the season, comes in, not the biggest statistical night you're going to find, but a pair of touchdown catches. And so that's some momentum that you're going to see building for him. So now he can go make the plays for you. Marvin's making plays. Emeka's had great games. Jackson, we're working him back in. You've got those guys. You've got Cade Stover. You've got an offense that can do a lot of different things. It's going to be tough to defend. One more great thing. Penalties. Talked about it last show. Said I wanted to see less than 3 ideally. I'd be happy with 5. One penalty for the Buckeyes in this game, 5 yards. Ryan Day cut the head off the snake. Talking about it in practice, they knew it wouldn't be an issue. You are what you emphasize, and they talked about it. They worked on it. They grinded through it, and that's the type of game you want to see played. If you play this clean, you're going to score 77 points because you're going to convert in the red zone, which is another thing. Red zone conversions, awesome for Ohio State. Ending drives and touchdowns. It's the only way you can put up big points like that. Field goals aren't getting it there for you. So 11 drives were touchdown drives, scoring drives. Awesome. Fantastic. And then the last thing I'll leave, I said red zone was great. Penalties were great. 11 for 13 on third downs on offense. It's really, really good. And conversely, Ohio State's defense, I want to say, was able to hold Toledo to like 3 or 4 of 13 or 14. Did a heck of a job on the other side. But 11 of 13 on third down. When you're good in the red zone, you don't commit penalties, you're able to continue moving the ball on third down, get off the field on third down on defense. That's when you're starting to build something. And so, yes, Toledo was overmatched. Yes, Ohio State has better players. It was at home. You had the crowd behind you. It was a night game, all these other things. But you came out and you acted accordingly. You did what you were supposed to do. And that's how the Buckeyes are supposed to act. That's how they're supposed to respond. It was a really great game. My kids had an awesome time. And now we're into the Big Ten slate, which brings me to this. The concern I have for the Big Ten, especially the Big Ten West. I mean, my goodness, like with what's going on there. Penn State, thankfully, was the glimmer of hope and was able to go out there and get a nice win and go beat Auburn and look impressive doing it. And in a good way. Michigan State, I thought they'd be able to take care of business against Washington. They looked woefully overmatched. I mentioned Wisconsin lost to Washington State last week. The Big Ten East is doing pretty well. I believe they've only lost one non-conference game, and that was Michigan State. But if you sit around here and look at the rest of the West, it is not a good situation right now. But Penn State winning, that's going to bolster them. Hopefully Michigan State doesn't fall too awful far, and Penn State can climb up into the mid-teens, and so you can have those clusters there. But I don't know who you're going to want to see the West. I mean, Purdue, oh my gosh, He wants to talk about blowing a game. Purdue scores with 53 seconds left. And we talk about penalties, score 53 seconds. Take a 4-point lead. 4-point lead. What do? Tight end that catches the touchdown is the wing on the field goal team, extra point. What's he do? Well, he doesn't let it get blocked, thankfully, as we've seen so much. Wings letting guys through, getting them blocked. But what he does do, he starts jawing. It's a 15-yarder. Then the special teams coach starts jawing. It's a 15-yarder. They're kicking off from the 10-yard line. Syracuse gets it to the 50. They have a defensive holding call that they get them to the 40. I believe that was the only positive yardage they had until they're playing man-to-man defense and give up a 40-yard touchdown with 7 seconds to go. You got to be kidding me, Purdue. It's Syracuse, and that was actually probably going to be a pretty decent win because Syracuse has looked pretty good, and that's what you do. My goodness. Painful. The West. Hurting. Got to get someone out there to win it. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll have the mailbag on Wednesday. Preview Wisconsin, one of my favorite games. I'll get in some rivalry stories here about that and everything that's going on. Some of the awesome speeches, because that stuff went back to the late 90s, Ron Dane here, everything else going on. And there was dancing on the W, dancing on the block after victories. And to me, I mean, over the last 15 years, 20 years even, the Michigan rivalry obviously is the game, but you had Michigan State sliding in there, but that Wisconsin rivalry, that's something I think that has been very, very underrated. Well, thanks for tuning in. Got a big one here. We'll get the mailbag on Wednesday, dive into that, start talking about some of the Wisconsin traditions, everything that's going there with those stories. Get you ready for the rest of this week. Hopefully we can get the Big Ten going as we start the conference slate. But until next time, let's talk to you soon.